you love tea? I do. So I went to Sri Lanka for a cuppa. I had cuppas in the low, mid, and high countries, and in fact I even attended the Dilma School of Tea. But Sri Lanka isn't just tea. It's also UNESCO World Heritage sites, beautiful beaches, abundant wildlife, amazing food, rubies, sapphires, toddy toppers, temples, and tuk-tuks. And I love tuk-tuks. So I rented one to explore this beautiful multicultural pearl in the Indian Ocean. Hi, my name is Scott Wilson, a nomadic bull, and this time I'm visiting Sri Lanka. It's quite novel. Let's have a closer look, shall we?
This thing's an absolute hoot. I love it. Good morning, sir.
Yes, very good morning.
You're in a rush, aren't you? We gotta get going.
Our week with Dilma was drawing to a close, and as a last request to our driver, Damika was taking us to Galle, Sri Lanka's fourth largest city on the south end of the country. On the way, however, we made an unexpected stop at a gem mine. Damika had begun to realize that I wanted to see everything, so made the stop so we could have a closer look. I had heard of Sri Lanka gems, so was excited to have a closer look at a working mine. Well, kinda working.
Hello.
Good morning.
Today not working because the engine
Engine kaput?
engine there's some problems not working. So they are waiting to
Fix engine.
Yeah, that's why not working because I have to remove the water.
Yeah.
That's the main process.
Okay. So this pumps fresh air inside.
Yeah, inside.
It was a pretty basic setup, a shaft which led to tunnels in different directions, a pump to remove water, another to supply fresh air to miners below, an area where support beams and posts could be cut to size, a holding area, a sifting area, and sleeping and eating quarters.
Okay, so sleep here.
Hello.
Yeah. Communication.
Yes, communication.
Yeah. I thought this here is where you send the beer. Shoom. It's good. Okay, how many people work here?
14 people.
14? Wow. So, and good gems? Many?
Making hamburger. Yes, some good one.
Some good one also.
Here they will take all soil from the down and put here. They have to fill here.
Okay.
And after fill that, they will use for the
They shake and find gem. Yeah.
That's a separate place. Here the place all collecting.
So here they store the soil,
that's right,
and then they take somewhere else.
That's
and
right, yes,
okay.
that's right. No, this is not gems.
No.
They all find from here.
Yeah. Oh wow.
These are fine.
Wow, look at that, eh? Beautiful. So then after you go through and they find
this
maybe...
already all finished. Find the gems.
Yeah.
This is not gem. If this is a good one, this should be ₹1,000,000. Like
a million rupee?
Yeah, if this is a good
that
one.
size?
Yeah.
Wow.
This should be a good one.
Yeah.
But this is dead one. And this is the most important thing because when you go down, start in the gem pit, this one is definitely need to find the gem. The gems
Yeah,
also.
if you see
yeah.
that, then you know gem
Yes,
close
yeah,
by.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Gems also with these stones.
Oh, yeah.
With these stones.
So if
This also gems, but it's a dead. What do you call it? It's a dead gems. This
Yeah.
one can't use.
Okay.
But this also gems,
Okay.
but no value this.
So, but you not find this, you not find gems. You
Yeah.
find this, then somewhere gems inside. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Superman, I like that. That's good. Mucho forte. Thank you. Cheers.
And then it was off to Gaule. I was really looking forward to this stop as it was a beautiful example of an old fortified city from the colonial days. We made our way to the coast where things started to get busy, then through the old city walls and finally found our accommodation, the Jetwing Gaule Heritage Villa.
71.
Gallery.
Galle Heritage Villa, right there.
This is the one.
Yeah.
I had asked Jetwing for this place specifically as it was in the old Dutch Quarter and was located in a beautiful old period Dutch villa. It's day one in Gaule, and what I'm starting to notice here is that a lot of the architecture, I've already mentioned the open plan thing, but what they do here is they bring the outdoors indoors. And I'll show you here. I mean, you know, this is, we're at the Jetwing Gaule Heritage Villa. Beautiful old converted colonial Dutch villa. And a lot of the spaces in the house are open to the outside because obviously here they don't need heating during the year. So a lot of the living spaces are just extensions of the inside with just the roof covering the decks and areas. So obviously during the monsoon season things aren't flooded. But I'll show you because the actual rooms, the bedrooms, are inside, okay. But as soon as you step out of your bedroom, you step out into a deck, and then the deck wraps around inside the house and carries on down into the living area. So, you know, birds or whatever, they can just cruise in and have a look around and come out at will. It's really quite neat. So tomorrow we're really looking forward to exploring Gaule. Stacks of history. Gonna be fun. We'll see you there. From the Heritage Villa, it was a short walk to the ramparts, and so off I went. Gaule was chosen early on in its history as it offered one of Sri Lanka's 2 natural deep water harbors. Because it was located on the south coast, it was perfectly placed for sea trading routes between Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia, and became an important trading stop long before the Europeans arrived. The first of which were the Portuguese in 1587, who captured Gaule from the Sinhala kings. The Portuguese recognized the potential of the area and lost no time in establishing a foothold by building a fort which they named Santa Cruz. Then, in 1640, the Dutch captured Gaule from the Portuguese and took up residence and went about expanding the fortifications, and in 1663 established the street plan much as it is today. From a Dutch outpost, it moved on to become a British one in 1796 as a byproduct of the Napoleonic Wars. Gaule is a magical place to go walk about. With coastal breezes filtering through the cobblestone streets, one can get lost in time and place wandering the old quarter. It's a great place to admire architecture and have leisurely conversations with the locals.
So you went to Austria and spoke about the healing powers of gemstones?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and these are gemstones mined in Sri Lanka.
Yes. And we in Sri Lanka, we do mine 75 different kinds of gemstones out of mainly 200 in the world.
Wow.
So each and every country, they are specialized in their own stones.
Yeah.
Likewise, when you come to Sri Lanka, our special stone is the sapphires and the moonstones.
So Sri Lanka's special stone is sapphire and the moonstone?
Yeah. Sapphire we do get nearly in 7 different colors.
How many?
7 different
Seven,
colors.
like,
we have the blue, the yellow sapphire, the white sapphire, the pink sapphire, the violet sapphire, the green sapphire, like on.
In Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka.
Wow. So in sapphire, big money?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Even the best Alexandrite, you get it in Russia and also in Sri Lanka.
Okay, the best.
Yeah, the best. You're from
So Sri Lanka has the best tea,
Yeah,
has the
that's
best gemstones,
gemstones, and also we have the rubber.
and the best rubber?
Yeah, you see. Tea, rubber, and coconut were our main export.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Gaule's story is quite ironic, as even though it continued on as Ceylon's principal harbor through the 19th century, it couldn't keep up with the island's capital port of Colombo. With harbor improvements in Colombo and increasing economic importance, Gaule began to lose trade volume and slowly fell into decline. It was an economic blow for the coastal city, but one that helped preserve its colonial integrity, as because it had become a backwater, there was no need to modernize. And so, what we are left with today is the UNESCO World Heritage Site of perhaps one of the greatest examples of a colonial fortified city left intact anywhere in the world. And what a place to watch the sunset. I just followed the locals' lead. They had it figured out. And after the sunset, it was time to take in Gaule by night and explore the narrow streets lined with old converted colonial buildings. As I meandered around the old town, it struck me that when history is given a chance and preserved, even if by accident, as it had been here, so much of what we once thought in need of change or demolition quite often becomes not only fashionable again, but gains in value by its physical existence, and through that, augments cultural identity. There's a usual evolutionary cycle at work in most cities that quite often obliterates history and associated landmarks. But Gaule had escaped the wrecking ball and managed to survive. What a cool place it is. And if it had started off as a trade destination all those centuries ago, it turns out trade is still alive and well in the old town. With my trading over and the rains beginning to fall, I settled in for a meal. Topped off with some buffalo curd and treacle, of course. What a day it had been. Diversity was a theme that was really starting to embed itself in my head as I rolled around the country. Sri Lanka is a small country, geographically speaking, a little smaller than Ireland, and almost exactly twice the size of Vancouver Island. But with a population of almost 21 million people, there's lots of input and lots of diversity. Starting with the island itself, it is blessed with beaches galore. There are beautiful beaches of the gateway city of Negombo that cater to tourists. There are beaches in the south that feature more rock and some cool little enclaves where surfers can ply their passion. Then on the southwest coast, there are others that surfers share with fishermen on a daily basis. And further to the north on the same coast, there are yet more beautiful beaches with more fishermen after their daily catch. Yes, if you like beaches, this is your country. From the beach, one can escape the heat by heading up into the hill country and exploring the world of tea. The hill country is a magical place, and due to the topography, water runs wild, and if one is uplifted by waterfalls, then the hill country doesn't disappoint. They are plentiful and vary in size. From there, you can head north or south and drop back down to the lowlands. In either direction, the drives are adventurous and spectacular, but be warned, the weather can be unpredictable in the high country. Then there's the wildlife. If one is seeking to see wildlife up close, there are all sorts of opportunities, both in the national parks, but also out and about on your daily adventures. And how about the food? Sri Lankan food is anything but boring, and I was fortunate enough to have tasted quite a bit of local cuisine, from egg hoppers at the Jet Wing Sea to traditional Sri Lankan dishes in the countryside. And of course, there were also the roadside takeaways. It was all amazing, with a taste for every palate. But I guess one of the greatest areas of diversity in Sri Lanka is religion. As one travels around the country, one is never far from a place of worship. And as Sri Lanka has had such a colorful history, there are many religions at play among the local populace. Some towns are predominantly of one religion, but most have numerous religious backgrounds, and it was amazing to see some of the buildings constructed for worship. I found this particularly fascinating as I love architecture. Some travel for the beaches, some for the food. I love those things too, but I especially love architecture, and Sri Lanka really shines in this category. Places of worship always reflect incredible human visions and craftsmanship, and if one takes their time in Sri Lanka, one can find some real gems, like the Temple of the Tooth and Candy. Which brings me back to Gaule, with its temples, churches, stupas, ramparts, cobblestones, and colonial masterpieces, like this old Dutch hospital, which had been reborn as a shopping and dining center. A 17th century Dutch mall, if you will. The Dutch influence continued with my second night in town in another Dutch-styled villa. It was a beautiful property that boasted some beautiful craftsmanship that was on display the moment one walked through the door. Just like the World Heritage Villa the night before, I could see how design was influenced by weather, with open living spaces extending to the outdoors. There were the similar veranda-style hallways that led to bedrooms that were magnificent in their execution, and as usual, culminated in gorgeous ceilings of exposed wood. In fact, wherever one looked, wood, stone, and metal were the materials of choice, and the attention to detail was not left wanting. Like these door hinges, everything had been thought out carefully. The craftsmanship carried through to the lower level, with shaded areas created to keep the sun's rays from finding its way to the thick plaster walls, a basic form of air conditioning. Architectural design can be influenced by many factors, and here it was plain to see weather was the primary influence at play, with techniques employed to keep the sun at bay when the skies were clear, and the rain at bay when they weren't. Where a lot of the old Dutch buildings, like another converted Dutch hospital, this one in Colombo, were built with walls 20 inches thick to keep the heat and humidity at bay. Many local buildings, where the locals are used to such heat, reflect a totally different approach, with open walls to let breezes through and simple roofs to keep the rain at bay. There was always a specific reason for each building design. like this fish market in Chilau, located right next to the river. More open walls to move the air, easily cleaned concrete floors, and a roof to keep the sun and rain off the produce inside, while fish is dried outside. In most cases, form follows function. And what about defense? Defensive structures are no different. We had already seen Fort Galle, but it is just one of many colonial forts around the island. There are others, like this one in Trincomalee, as well as older ones, like Sigiriya, a 5th century rock fortress using a massive 200-meter tall rock column as a natural setting for defense. It is magnificent. And as we move on from the 5th century through to the 21st century, the architecture is there as a witness to the evolution of its inhabitants. Some of the older buildings still stand strong, while new modern buildings rise from the ground, with some of the most interesting coming as a result of tourism. New eco-resorts are popping up, and most modern hotels reflect an approach that still adheres to old traditions of working with the weather. Sri Lanka is all about open plan, about bringing the outside in, and about living spaces that extend beyond traditional barriers. Through cultural tastes and practicality, Sri Lankan architecture has become a very flowing concept, one that personally I love. There is something about walking into a building, any building, without passing through a door, then sauntering through living areas, maybe sitting down for a snack, then exiting the far side of that same building without passing through yet another door. Yeah, there's definitely something about that plays with one's senses, with one's expectations. I guess the best word to describe the sensation would be the word fun.
Oh yeah? Oh, there you go. Present. All right, cool. Okay, so which one, number one, cricket or football?
At the moment, it's cricket.
Yeah?
Yeah, at the moment it's cricket, because after the English coming to Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
they introduced cricket.
They introduced-
And yeah, that's right. Even a small child, they are on the beach, they play cricket.
Okay.
Why is it that whenever we feel the need to go somewhere exotic, we get on a plane and leave? What's wrong with our own backyard? What's wrong with Vancouver Island? Well, as it turns out, nothing at all.
Wasn't sure for sure that it was in fact an island.
Vancouver Island is as exotic as it gets, but it's a different kind of exotic. It's not palm trees and margaritas. It's giant cedars and single malt. It's a pristine and wild exotic.
Fish whisper and sardines, they're on camera.
Hi, my name is Scott Wilson, aka the Nomadic Bull. Join me and my good buddy, Dominic Medlinski, the Zen guy, as we explore our island.
54 and 50.
We'll head up north and meet Joey and learn about Cole Harbor. We'll take in a potlatch in Alert Bay, and we'll ride the rails in Port Alberni. And maybe we'll just have a tipple or two. We'll meet great locals, hear fascinating stories, ride through stunning scenery, and wallow in a beautiful wilderness setting. Vancouver Island is a gem, our gem. and it's time to share it. This is Changing Landscapes Vancouver Island.
So here's the Nomadic Bull and the Zen Guy.
And the acting base commander for CFB Esquimalt today.
The museum is open to the public Monday through Friday, 10 till 3:30.
And admission is by donation, well worth it. Go and check it out.